What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are going to be taking a look at the rumors around Elias Pettersson maybe getting traded from the Vancouver Canucks. We just made a video the other day about JT Miller, what could be going on there. We might step back into that a little bit in today's video, but really we're going to be focusing on PD today because obviously there seems to be a rift in the locker room for whatever there seems to be going on behind the scenes. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything. I'm not going to make speculation because at the end of the day, we don't really know all the details, what's gone on in the locker room with Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, and that whole situation. So we're not going to pretend to know everything here. So what we're going to talk about is the reality of the situation, which is what destinations could we see Elias Pettersson going to and for what price? Because we saw something come up with JT Miller. There's a lot of crossover between the two here in the speculation because maybe what they get in a trade for JT Miller isn't going to necessarily be what they want in a trade for Elias Pettersson. And there's been a lot of rumors about what could happen with a Pettersson trade. It started off with rumors actually circling to the New York Islanders and the fact that these two teams have made trades before. Bo Horvat potentially playing with his former line mate, teammate in Elias Pettersson. There's obviously a possibility that could happen here, but it depends on what is coming back the other way. What do the Canucks want in return? And that's really what's going to separate a lot of teams here from who's really going to be in this and who's not going to be in the conversation for Pettersson. Now, the ideal situation for the Canucks is they get some kind of one-for-one and they feel like they're getting a player in return that's worth the value of Pettersson. The issue with that is that's going to be very difficult to do because what teams out there are giving up that what probably would be either a first line forward who they think is like Pettersson or a defenseman, a top pairing defenseman that they think has the value of Pettersson. And that doesn't really happen. We don't really see those trades happen all that often, especially in the middle of the season like this. So I'm interested kind of thinking about what could be on the table here for an Elias Pettersson trade. If it is a team like the Islanders, you're definitely looking at it more as you're looking to get players that can step in right now in that type of deal. And you're probably looking at something like Simon Holmstrom, Noah Dobson, and a first-round pick, if I had to guess. Now, I don't even think that would be enough for the Canucks. I think the Canucks would definitely like a little bit more in return, especially for Elias Pettersson. And the other conversation would have to be, especially for the Islanders' first-round pick this year, is that a lottery-protected pick? And I think that's something that we've seen a lot of teams get nipped up with and get caught up with. If that ends up being a lottery pick and the Islanders don't protect it, that could be a problem. But it could also affect the value of this deal for the Canucks. And in all honesty, is it worth it for the Canucks to take the gamble? Because let's say the Islanders get Elias Pettersson, they're automatically going to get better in that deal. So is their pick really going to be that good? I mean, maybe it's worth taking the chance, right? Because if it ends up being the 15th or 16th pick, there's a shot that could move up to the third overall pick. But is that really something you want to be banking on when you're trading a guy like Elias Pettersson? I don't really think you should include that in the value. I think that's a very risky move for a player like Pettersson that, if you're thinking in your head that the value here could be a third overall pick instead of the reality, it's probably going to be between 12 and 16, well, that's going to change how you kind of evaluate that deal, right? So with that all being said, circling to other teams that I think could definitely be interested, the New Jersey Devils, the Columbus Blue Jackets, what makes them probably more attractive than the Islanders in this deal is they have a lot of younger players that are available, more prospect level players that the Canucks can bring in on the cheap, and they have the value and the potential of what they could be, more so than what you have with Simon Holmstrom and Noah Dobson, and kind of going from that route. So, especially if we're looking at the Devils, I think what's interesting about the Devils is you look at guys like Simon Nemec. You look at a lot of those younger guys that they have up front, like Dawson Mercer. I don't think they'd trade Jesper Bratt, but in a deal for Elias Pettersson, would they be okay with a deal like that? Those are the kind of things that you have to really think about with the Devils, and there's a lot of different pieces that could be going in that deal. There isn't one guy you're like, oh, that guy's absolutely going. I think Simon Nemec would be a starter because especially when you look at the Devils' blue line already, like there's not a ton of room there for Simon Nemec unless they're moving somebody else out. I would assume that Nemec would be going the other way. So that's kind of an interesting angle to look at for the Devils. For the Blue Jackets, what's interesting with the Blue Jackets, I mean, they just traded away that young defenseman that they really like, David Juracek. So that would have been the first guy I would have went to in terms of a deal. So now that he's no longer there, well, now you're kind of thinking, well, what are we looking at now? Because if you're looking at the Blue Jackets and their prospects, there's definitely room for players there that could be valuable and something that, I think the Blue Jackets, the Canucks could definitely be interested in. But it kind of comes down to what really do the Canucks want back for Pettersson? Like, do they want to fix their blue line a little bit and get younger? Do they want to fix the, obviously losing Pettersson and Miller, they're probably going to want more forwards in that group too. I'll just rattle off a couple of the younger players already on the roster for the Blue Jackets. Luca De La Beluz, Adam Fantilli, we're not seeing him go anywhere. Jordan Harris, who they got from the Habs last year. Kent Johnson, Denton Matejchik. That could be an interesting name that I wouldn't be surprised if Pettersson sweepstakes could be getting in return. Mikhail Pataya, who is a young forward, a Finnish forward. Cole Sillinger, I don't see him going anywhere. Dmitry Voronkov is another one that I could be looking at if I'm the Canucks. 24-year-old Russian forward. So there's a couple of guys already on the roster that could be interesting to the Canucks and guys that they might want to pull apart in a deal. So when we consider why the Blue Jackets would be a good fit, I mean, you look at what they've done this year, they're right in the mix for the playoffs this year. They're right on the bubble of a wild card spot, right? They think they can make it this year. And you had a guy like Elias Pettersson in this team. They might be willing to trade their first-round pick. They have enough prospects. They already have enough draft picks. They don't necessarily need that first-round pick as, say, like a team we just mentioned, like the Islanders. And that's why I think it's going to be difficult for the Islanders to make a deal here because, I mean, they are literally trading the farm. They are trading everything they have when they trade away a first-round pick, Simon Holmstrom. Every single maybe young player on the Islanders would be getting traded at this point. And I don't know if Lou Lamoriello is going to have the authority to do that at this point, and I don't know if the Islanders are going to be comfortable enough trading that first-round pick. Meanwhile, Columbus, I think, would be more than willing to, not without a second thought, be willing to move that pick, even if it's not lottery protected. I could see the Blue Jackets be willing to move that pick. And that ultimately is why I think the Blue Jackets are the top destination here for a guy like Elias Pettersson. It's a lot quieter in Columbus, and this isn't a discredit to the Blue Jackets and Columbus. He's not going to be getting the attention he's gotten in Vancouver. He's going to be able to just play his game. And I think that's really going to help out a guy like Pettersson because there isn't a ton of, from what we've heard, there isn't a ton of distractions in his life that are going to affect it, whether he's in, maybe another player like who was in Winnipeg, like Patrick Laine, who maybe had other issues going on other than external factors. I think a lot more of Pettersson's situation is external, and it's not an internal thing where when he goes to another team it's going to carry over. I think going to Columbus would be a really good thing for him. He's playing with a lot of really good players. There's a lot of really good young players on the Blue Jackets already, right? So I really think that could be a really good fit. The connection between Columbus and Elias Pettersson is ultimately my pick for where I think we could see an Elias Pettersson trade go. They've got some young players in their mid-20s, early 20s that they could move out in the deal and still find a way to kind of be at a happy medium with the Canucks to get that deal done. With that said, though, we've heard a lot of rumors about Columbus, the Devils, the Islanders, even the Sabres. I've heard some really interesting teams thrown in the mix, specifically from the East. But I wouldn't be opposed, considering what we've heard. This is from Elliot Friedman. He said that, there's a pretty good chance that a deal was on the table with the Rangers. Are the Rangers going to consider swinging back and looking at, they've looked at JT Miller. Do they look at Elias Pettersson and maybe trying to bring him in? And then the other thing, let me get to it. The other thing that we've kind of been hearing a lot about is, that they aren't necessarily afraid to trade with a team in the West. So if that's the case, there's plenty of teams in the Western Conference that could also be a good fit here for a deal. Like, maybe you want to keep him in the West, but maybe not in the division, right? So maybe you don't trade him to a team like the Kraken or the Flames, obviously, or the Kings, right? But maybe you're willing to trade him to, say, the Blues or Utah or Nashville or Chicago or one of those teams, right? Maybe you could find a way to get something like that done. I think the Canucks are going to do their due diligence to make sure they get the best package in return for both JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. If I had to put my guess right now, I really think the forefront runner for a guy like Elias Pettersson is going to be the Blue Jackets, just because of they want to get back to the playoffs this year. And they're in a situation where you have teams kind of what we were expecting to see at some point, like the Islanders and the Penguins kind of falling off. And the Rangers are having a down year. The Flyers are still kind of down, right? So this is the Blue Jackets' chance. If they get into a wild card spot, maybe not when we thought they would, this is their chance to do that. And you make a trade, acquiring a guy like Pettersson, you're going to instantly add some confidence into the locker room. This is a team that they're showing, like, they deserve a chance. And you add a guy like Pettersson to this team, the sky's the limit for the Blue Jackets this year. And they could be a real dark horse to potentially be maybe not winning the Stanley Cup, but going on a deep playoff run. And maybe getting to the second, maybe third round of the playoffs. But there's a lot in the road ahead of the Blue Jackets before they get there. But I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you think of the rumors around Elias Pettersson? What kind of trade proposals would you have? Throw those in the comment section down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you again next time.